All right, we've got this Jura to deal with. Showed up on my doorstep. It is a client of mine that has several of his units repaired in the past. Good choice. And according to the client, this does not pump, does not give out any water, make a brew, any of that good stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and start it up, and we'll be back when it's ready to start up. Okay, let's turn it on. You can hear that little dog struggle hard in the startup. Sounds like, yep. So we have a malfunction 8. That is an error 8. That's a brew unit issue. Piece of cake. It's something I take care of anyways while we're in here. We rebuild the brew units, the grinder. I add new burrs, all sorts of good stuff to this bad boy. So let's go ahead and tear her down and find out if we can see some more. All right, let's go. Okay, look at these. These can be difficult to take off if you don't know what you're doing, but the best way I found is just put your fingers right here and lift them up. And look, they pop right out, no damage to them, no nothing. If they do get damaged, they're about 20 bucks a pop or so to replace this. I've got a box full of them over there, so hopefully we won't have to do that. A lot of times I can print out the correct hook and clasp for it, and we can get it 3D printed. And then I can glue it on. And that seems to work sometimes, and when you're in a bind. Okay. Jura likes to use these weird shaped tools because they don't believe in the right to repair. And if they wanted to let you repair your own machine, they'd give you access to it, but they don't. However, this is not a unique tool. It's used in all sorts of different appliances. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to remove. You gotta get it that first little turn and then they go. That or your tool's just wearing out, and mine has seen more Juras than, gosh, a normal one of these would see. Because you can buy these as consumers and it works pretty good for your one machine, but if you do like a couple hundred of them, it starts to get a little wonky. So I invest in a couple of these. This is a stainless steel version. This is probably the best one I've owned. Every other version of it with the softer metal just give out way quicker. All right, so what do we got here? It's actually really clean. You can always find the date of when these were manufactured by looking down at this. This is a month. Looks like it was made in maybe April of 2023. 2003 maybe? I don't know if this is a 2003 model. It's probably 2013. There's other ways of knowing. You can just flip her and look for your code here. 2003. This is actually a 2003 model, so there you go. So this unit is well over 20 years old. It's probably in one of the better conditions I've seen some of these units. But it looks like in 2012 it got a new brew unit. Possibly from the refurb factory. Usually they'll have, yeah, there it is. So definitely was looked at in the past by Jura. All right, we're just going to continue to tear this little guy open. Next we're tackling the front door. Now typically you don't need this out right away. But it's good to get it out of the way. There's little tabs on the bottom here. You gotta click and you can pull it away from the body. Not all the way because she's still connected right over here. It's good to get like a little hooky or some sort of thin guy. So maybe tweezers. Pop that sucker out. Now you should be able to pull this away a little easier. And we do undo some of these guys to allow this to breathe a bit. Because we're going to get to this door. We're going to get this spout out eventually. But right now we need to focus on getting that brew unit out. So first thing for these C series, these E series, these what is it, C through F, you have to remove these screws first. In most other models you can just remove it at the brew unit, but it's actually being held by those two screws there first. And you typically know when that's the case when you have regular size 15 Torx here, because typically they're going to be the 20 torque. It's not going to happen on this one. We need a little tenor here. I lost my 10 for my drill here. I don't know where it happened to it. Whatevs. You can see that it jammed up to the top, which they typically do when they fail. I almost never put this screw back in. Okay. So we need to remove these 3 screws. And we undo the clip down here. I don't know if you can see that. Once you have that, you now have complete access to this brew unit. And you can articulate it by moving the gear. And yeah, it's really jammed up, but not as bad as I thought it would be, considering this thing gave me an error 8, but it is moving very slow. Oh yeah. And when you're trying to pull this guy back, it's very hard to move. Right there. It's just what happens, man. This thing's over 10 years old. At least the brew unit. The machine's over 20. So we're gonna rebuild that. I'll show you how to do that. And while we're here, we're going to also replace the burrs. We're gonna use my upgraded steel burrs that we always put into these. Don't let the competition tell you they're the only ones who do it. I don't know where they got that idea. Like they're the only ones who can find that burr somewhere. Nope, I have access to exactly what they have. Okay, when dealing with your grinder here, it's okay to use a power tool to remove the screw. This is actually a 20 torque, but a 15 always works in there because if it's all the jammed up gunk in there. But whenever we put this back in, we are going to use hand tools. It is so easy to mess up that part and ruin your grinder. So we're not going to do that. So we want to make sure to get all three springs and all 3 balls bearings there. And so I just take a magnet, stick them. That's all there is to it. All right, so the main parts of this machine have been removed. We're also going to remove a lot of these components that have corrosion, so our pressure membrane needs to be replaced. We're also going to replace all the O-ring, waterline O-rings. We're going to replace them with a high quality silicone replacement. You've got a little check valve in here. We're going to go inspect that and make sure that that's working order, but we're always going to change out the insides of that bad boy. Pumps are pretty good for a very long time. We'll see how that runs when we're able to. But through visual inspection, I always kind of look over at my plug to make sure I'm not plugged in while I'm touching electronics. Sort of a good habit to get into, because last thing you want to do is get jolted. All right, so I'm gonna take a little breaky poo, and we're going to be right back to rebuild the system. All right, I've made videos on, or I made a video on rebuilding a Jura brew unit. By now I can do these blindfolded, but I'm not going to. But if anyone wants to see that, let me know. We'll definitely try to make that happen. But it's about breaking this thing down, opening it up, taking it apart, and you know, for it being a over 10-year-old brew unit, it's actually in really great shape. I mean, I am decently surprised on how clean it actually is. Yeah, so I've got a little sonic cleaner back there we're going to dump everything into. You want to make sure you get all your little nicky knacks, put them in a little mesh bag there because they want to get those cleaned as well. Yeah, you see, they use nice O-rings here, but they'll use O-rings everywhere else that are going to get really hard and damaged. It's like planned obsolescence, it seems to me. These smaller parts we're going to put in here so we can keep our eye on them. I mean, boy, those are clean. I mean, look at this O-ring. That looks like a brand new O-ring still. We're going to replace it either way because it's best practices. And you know me, I like the best practice. I don't want these machines to come back. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of hard to see. Okay, where were we? All right, drain valve out. Get a little hook for these C-clips. Put your finger behind them, or E-clips rather, so that when you do plop them off, they don't go flying. When I was in auto shop in high school, my shop teacher called that the Jesus clip, because if you don't do this, they go flying. You're asking him for help. So you see, this is the front of the brew unit. This is the back. We'll consider this the back. In micro units, you actually have to remove it backwards like this, which it doesn't work on this side. Just to let you know, if you're ever working on micro units, and you just compress these two together and pop, they come flying out. Look at that. I mean, this thing is way cleaner than I thought. Look, there's nothing jammed up in the gearbox. I mean, it's a matter of these O-rings just dried up. They dried up, and there's not much you can do about it because they don't give you any access to this brew unit. They give you some access through the top of it, and I suppose you could like spray something in there to get yourself a couple more, you know, weeks or whatever. I mean, I suppose anything's possible. All right, here's the drain valve. Very easy little guy. It's been adjusted and made different in the newer models, but this is the old school one with the little elbow there. It doesn't have that little cover that everyone hates, where you have to get the 9mm in there, or the 9 torque. Best way to get it out, press these two guys here, and then you want to make sure that you let that clear the hole. And then boom. It's just so nice and simple, this older version. And this O-ring here, yeah, that O-ring is stiff as a rock. That's going to be another area where it's going to have a lot of friction. So this interacts with this guy right here. And it's super important you get the right size O-ring, otherwise it'll tear. In this case, they use those black Viton rubber that tend to get very brittle and snap. They turn into little rocks in there. Just not my favorite, but they last an extremely long time. So it's crazy how long those little O-rings will last. So we're rebuilding the drain valve, getting all the O-rings out of it. Look at all the O-rings in here. And then we've got our drain valve lip seals here. Try to open this up without damaging anything. Boom. And these lip seals are good. I mean, these will work again, but we're not in the habit of reusing gaskets. No, siree, Bob. Spent a lot of money getting those gaskets from overseas. We want to make sure you get as rebuilt of a machine as possible. We do not want to be reusing gaskets. That's ridiculous. Some of them you can, when they're not as important to pressure and such. For instance, this guy. Now you could replace this if you've got the right dimensions, but this guy really doesn't ever get damaged. It is an important function of this grinder, making sure that we don't have grinds that come up and jam up in here. Trust me, it doesn't work really well without this. But it is something we can reuse. I actually have on order a bunch of silicone versions of that. See if that's a viable replacement for them. These are the old burrs. That doesn't look like the same burr that they use. This is, wow, this is not the same burr that they use in this machine that I've seen before. Now notice the serrated edges here. I don't typically see that in these units here, or maybe I do. Maybe I just never noticed them. So these are the upgraded ones, and yeah, look at that, they've got little steps. How did I never notice that before? We'll edit that part out. Anyways, so these are the old burrs, well worn. They're at least 10 years old, if not 20, over 20 years. We're gonna replace those with these bad boys right here. Pardon the mess. Oh yeah, stainless steel. One thing you'll notice right off the bat, I'll show you my dirty hands, is the difference in the gear part of this, or the auger part, if you will. How there's such a dramatic slope to this, and that helps pull these beans in. It will pull these beans in. It will grind way more than these will ever grind in their lifetime. And mind you, we have to adjust the grinder, or excuse me, adjust the aroma of these this machine so that we don't overdose, because these will absolutely grind way more than these do. So we'll get those ready to replace. We need to go ahead and get all of our parts cleaned, and we'll be back when it's all ready and able. Okay, let's get to replacing all the knickknacks in here that need to be replaced, O-rings and any sort of parts that we see that aren't doing so well. All right, let's take a seat here. All right, so first and foremost, let's get the solenoid down. We'll need access to the boiler a bit. Okay, dokay. So there's not a lot of O-rings to replace. We've got the 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then that's about it. I mean, there's not much to replace in here. I will definitely take this check valve off, top hat valve, to the Jura folk. Now, this hat valve is a check valve. It allows one-way flow, as you can see. That's what we call a check valve. It also acts as somewhat of an expansion valve as well, because it is part of the brew line, and there's going to be heat and expansion. And so this little plunger in here is exactly what that's designed to do. Allow that to expel out way more air than it's providing in pressure. So anything over 15 bars, it's going to expel it out. Just by popping up this little guy here, there's our top hat valve. And if we look at the top hat valve, there's some, I don't know if that's scale. Yeah, it's scale on the seat itself. and the seat there is well worn. So this is gonna have me replace this entire assembly in here. Now we could get a brass version of this, which will make this thing completely amazing. But what really gets worn here is this little nub here. When that little nub goes like that, this little guy does not want to push, and it allows this to lift up, and it just doesn't do what it's supposed to do anymore. I went ahead and broke that little tab off. It probably still could have worked, but we're in the business of repairing things, not just band-aiding them. So if you're someone like me that wants to make sure things are fixed, we get the right parts. This here's a check valve kit. So we get a new check valve stem, we get a new cone gasket, brand new, no lines in it, no nothing. And then you get a bunch of O-rings, which I don't like using these black O-rings. I like using silicone for most, I mean, it all depends on the application. High friction stuff you want to maybe avoid too big of an O-ring, but yeah, I mean, you'll be all right with silicone in almost every place in this machine. I mean, considering that the piston valve and the, you know, the brew unit itself, that there uses a silicone, and that's high friction. As long as it stays like lubricated, you're not going to get that E8 issue. But as you can see here, we've got it all rebuilt. Get a little can of lube. Lube's getting a little dirty, but the lube is still good. Just try not to add any of the grounds that get in there. So I'm just lubing up that ring somewhat. I'm looking for a towel to wipe my fingers. Right here. Okay, so now that we've got that all nice and beautiful looking, brand new feeling, I'm gonna pop that sucker right in here. Get your little spring in there. You'll know it's in there good because you feel its seal. You feel the seal, and boom, there we go. Now you can see, now when I get these Juras from the factory, it's kind of jarring where they use black O-rings and red O-rings. Yeah, they use silicone O-rings. I don't understand the purpose of having a silicone one on this side and then the weaker rubber on the other side. I don't understand it. So I'm sure there's some sort of reason. Maybe the black O-rings are they cost less or something. But either way, it's not the right O-rings to be using for longevity. So we're going to replace them all with the nice red silicone. And while you're in there, look at this. I mean, you can see a little bit of scale in this line. It's not crazy at all. It deserves a descaling. And let's make sure we put this back in the right way. So this line goes to the brew unit, so that's an out. So we want to make sure we install this the correct way. Super easy to do. Pop it in. If the O-rings are a little tight, add a little lube to them. They'll slip right into place for you. You just don't want to force it to the point where you could tear that O-ring by putting it in there too rough. Okay, so we had one of these screws from the brew unit motor fall out. Typically you probably want to grab those and set them aside because it can fall behind the motor here, the vibration pump, and it can be kind of difficult to remove. Usually I have a magnet sitting there and it's not to be found. We'll find it later, no worries. Let's get to replacing more O-rings. Now, this pressure membrane valve, it looks like it's experienced some corrosion. I'm just gonna pop this little sucker off. And yeah, just looking at that ring, there's like no sealing that this thing can do much anymore. I mean, once they shrink is what happens, and they conform to the size that they're put in, into the container they're put in. And maybe there's a little bit of sealing left, but this is on its way out. And the first thing it's going to do, it's going to start spraying water out of this little area, and you're probably going to get water on your membrane, and the membrane is going to corrode up a bit. This doesn't look too bad, actually. It's still doing its thing. I mean, after all, this thing is just an elbow valve that has a balloon on the end so that it can build up pressure. It's kind of cool. We'll go ahead and keep it in here for now, and we'll run it and see if there's any need for replacing it. One thing I can absolutely replace for now is that O-ring. Now, if we look at this, now you can actually see that this is the size of the hole, maybe a little smaller than that, a little bigger than that, but then you can see the O-ring itself has got some size to it. It's bulbous, and that's what seals in there, and also can keep it from pushing down all the way. So that's why you would use a little lube. Little water helps as well. You don't have to lube them if they don't need them, but look at that piece of cake. Easy Japanesey. We're going to do the same thing with this elbow and connector here. So look, they use silicone in this. Matter of fact, that's a good silicone gasket there. Typically, you could probably keep that in there because nothing's changing much if it looks like a brand new O-ring. But we follow some practices here that are called, basic practices, best practices. So it's just best. Remove the dang O-ring. You popped it out, just replace it. And look, so they use the red one there, and then they use the weak ones over here that are getting flattened out. They don't even have a bulbous end to them anymore. They just flatten out. So this is why we replace these O-rings. But these silicone ones will last an incredibly long time. Like, just incredibly long time. So we've got that all settled. We can install this back in there. Okay, so just that little amount of work, we removed all that stuff. Don't need anything else in here. I mean, everything else is pretty dang... Oh, I misspoke because I forgot about the outlet of that pump. But I can tell you, I know what they put in there. For some reason, they'll put silicone in there. I mean, I know the reason, because it's superior rubber to what they typically have put in here. It just seems odd that they just wouldn't just go ahead and put that everywhere. They want your repairs. So you pop these little suckers off and there'll be red O-rings in here. They always put red O-rings. There you go. I don't even have to know, or I don't even have to open it to know that they put decent O-rings in here that are, yeah, I mean, these are not gonna fail. They weren't ready to fail. Does that stop me from replacing them since we're here? Nope. You're lazy if you just replace, or if you just take them out, make sure there's red ones in there and put it back in. You did all that work, taking them out. And it takes almost no time to get them replaced. As you can see, we did that in less than a minute. All right, let's get this all back to normal here. We're going to replace that ring once we get to the steam area. Come on. There we go. Okay. Just give it a little bit of a once over with this guy, and we're happy with that. All right, let's get to cleaning the inside of this unit. I think first, before we tackle anything here, let's just go ahead and remove the front spout. I do want to get that all into the cleaner so that it is ready for replacement when we need to. We're not replacing it, but I mean making sure it's clean so we can replace it back in this machine. You're going to need 10s over here. And this little guy goes up here like this. Now we can see that the mount for it is broken. It goes typically right here. That's okay. If you don't plan on sending it over to Jura, then you don't need to worry about that little port. What Jura will do is they'll plug that in. It'll give them information like when the machine was made, and then also will no doubt give you the information on what occurred during the rebuild of this thing when you sent it in back in 2012. But that's it. They'll say you may be able to flash new software on here, but it doesn't do anything really. And I know this as a former tech for Jura units. It would make you plug that sucker in so that they know what's going on with their machines. They won't really know what's going on with this machine because we won't be plugging it in. We are not authorized to do so. Authorized meaning Jura knows that I'm doing this. Jura probably knows I'm doing this. They just, I don't know. Can they send us cease and desist? All right. So easy way to get this out. Come around to the bottom of this thing. You see my finger? Once you got that all screwed, just push right here. Push and kind of tip up, and that gives us access to the very heavy spout here. I mean, this is heavy duty. Listen to that. And it's mostly right here. This is the heft of it. Now this doesn't look too bad. You don't want to be removing this because this is glued on to there. So we don't want to remove that unless you want to glue it back in place with some ABS plastic, which we don't really want to be doing. We are going to be removing the heavy spout from it. And we'll throw this whole sucker in there into our cleaner. All right, so we're at a point where we're going to let that stuff soak and clean. And then I'm going to dry it all up, and then you'll find it all just laid out here. We'll be back. I did want to make one more mention of something. While you're waiting for all that stuff to clean, it's no excuse to just sit around and do nothing. It's time to clean the actual body of this. This is the best chance we have to give them the best clean that this machine's ever had before. Not that they're going to see much, but if they look inside, they'll see the bottom of this being all dirty. So we really want to make sure we clean all these grounds up and just give it a good final clean using things like Puro Calf. We don't use a lot of this 90% for cleaning like this because it doesn't really do that great in the cleaning. Orange and Puro do really well for coffees and such. This is general grease and such will be good for this. But this is good for cleaning and polishing and not leaving streaks as much. These are going to be great for your actual cleaning and your grunt work, getting down into the grease. And then that helps just finish off the clean. Cool? All right. We've got our entire brew unit assembly. Everything we needed to replace, our O-ring kit. Let's get to rebuilding. So So everything's nice and clean and just ready to go. I typically get and fix up the drain valve first. It is the quickest little thing. Get you going. So we always want to make sure we've got nice lubricated gaskets. They work better, they resist tearing more, but they're a little easier to install once they're a little bit lubed up there. I should put on some gloves, which I should do. Wow, that's the first time I've ever had issues putting these in. I swear. I don't even know if you can see what I'm doing. Alright, let's get this rebuilt. I'm glad I got the drain valve seals in there. And we're just going to close it up. Don't forget to put a little bit of lube here. Boom. And with this gasket kit, it makes things super easy to replace. Where do you get this kit? I sell them. I create the kit. So if you want them, give me a holler. Alright, you want to get this guy in here first, because he's not easy to put in once he's inside the assembly. So okay, lube is king on here, you guys. So you need to make sure you're using not too much, just the right amount, the perfect amount. Very nice. Boom. Ain't that something? Okay, so let's get to rebuilding the other parts of this. Oop, let's clean that a little better. Got some crud still here. There we go. Make sure when you're installing these O-rings, these bigger guys, that you get underneath the O-ring. You don't want it all twisted up. Sometimes what I see is folks kind of getting it on there, and it's all crooked and twisted up, and under pressure it's going to act weird. So you can get something underneath and just do one of these. That just makes sure that the O-ring is not twisted up at all, and she's ready to go. Getting a little bit of lube on that O-ring. Now we're going to deal with the rise stem here, the riser. I forget what they called this one. That's going to also require some O-rings with the nice check part of the valve in here. And boom, look at that. Ready to go. My O-rings came in, so I've replaced that with the silicone, as I was mentioning before. Came in as we were working on this. Same thing with this. We want to make sure that that's not twisted up either. I can tell it didn't, but it's always good for reassurance, doing one of those. Okay, a couple notes here. Maybe just one note. Get a little bit of lube up in here. I like to get it on my finger pad and just sort of scrape my finger a bit so that I can get some in the hole there. You know, just move it around. It's a very high friction area, and we're going to need that, and it interacts with this guy here. So I want it to be nice in here. We don't want it to be rough and make that O-ring have to work harder than it has to work. Okay. We're just doing our preliminary lubing. before we rebuild. So there's a certain way of getting this on here. There's a certain way of pushing this on here. Making sure you got the right directions. This goes in here like this. Then you put this little guy in here like this. You get your E-clips again. One. And if you're missing any of these, it could lead to an error 8 as well. So we're going to slide one of the bearings under the gearbox ears here. And then we're going to slide up our drain valve. Boom. And now we can start putting together the rest. Now I like to get a little bit of lube here as well. It's a good place for friction. And you always do see like rubbing marks there too. So it's a good idea to get that going. There's a certain way of getting these up. There's a flat side on the on that little gear wheel there. I mean, this is coming together quickly, as it should. Typically, it doesn't take me very long to do these. It takes me longer to explain how to do all this stuff, which is what's been holding me back from recording. Once we get everything going, we can run this gear a bit, make sure it doesn't jam up, make sure it closes up. We reset it to home position. We put our top on. Nice. We got another O-ring here for this guy. A little bit of lubey. We shove that right up in there. Nice. Got our final O-ring. Boom. And we're going to need one more O-ring right here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But look at that. What's a brew unit? Pretty easy, right? And you get one of these bad boys. Every Jura gets one of these. We put it on the working side where we can see it, so that when we see it again, we know when it was rebuilt. Basically factory rebuilt, except this is not the Jura factory. Matter of fact, we're using probably better quality rings in it this time around. We like to do a month and a year. And that's the brew unit. Look at that. The automat, as some folks would call it. There it is. All right. Oh, we forgot one last little part. The useless blade. I mean, it's got some use, but who wants that? All right, we're going to rebuild the grinder assembly while we replace the burrs at the same time. Pretty simple little task here. We've already cleaned out the chamber. We got our new burrs, so we'll go ahead and replace the brass sleeves in here. And because we used a magnet to keep all of our, usually don't put it next to screws, we'll go ahead and put our springs back in. In future models, they eliminated this completely, which I really like. Yeah, I have yet to see any sort of issues with them, but I can imagine that the plastic tabs may eventually break off. Anyways, these all have to go in a certain way, and we talked about this earlier. We want to use hand tools. First, what you want to do is back this up until it drops a bit. There. That means it's clicking into the threads, and that way you will have zero resistance while this thing's screwing in. You'll start feeling a little resistance because now it's pushing and pulling down. And now we're going to make sure that we tighten this up without going crazy, and we should be able to start spinning this. That's a good sign. There's a little sanity check I used to teach others. Just to make sure that there's no space between the burr and the spinning plate. Just get something that's that could get under there and see if it does get under there. If it gets under there, it's not down tight enough, and the ears of this are not interacting with the plate itself. So that's that. That's installed nice. The top burr is going to go in here. It's a 1-to-1 replacement. It's super simple. You just want to make sure you clean it off pretty well. and blow out any excess stuff. We're going to lightly lubricate this, just lightly lubricate this ring, just so it's a little slipperier and not crazy. And that slips down in there real nice. We lined it up, and we'll go ahead and make sure that those line up like that. We can probably go back a little bit just to make sure these burrs are much different, very much different. Okay, so we've completed that front, that whole side there. Oop, I gotta finish wiping off some of this. We've done the cleanup of this already, so we're going to go ahead and get our brew unit reinstalled. One thing you want to do when getting this in here is getting your hand through the front of this machine and down here like this, so that you can make sure that you're putting this in here in the right spot. Now it's going to want to dip down, but it's going to want to screw in when you have it up like that. So be prepared to put it up a bit. We're going to get our screws here for this. Again, you want to also use hand tools for this. Or if you got something that can do that will not over tighten, you can use that. So that's what I like to use. Making sure you've engaged with the thread first. So pulling it back a bit, making sure it engaged with the thread. That way you're not forcing it. Finally, we'll use our drain valve here. Now, you'd probably want to replace this one with a stainless steel one, as they've done in the past. I don't have any on me at the moment. It would be a good one to go ahead and change that to stainless steel. And then we'll get that in there like that. Excellent. All right, we got one last O-ring from our O-ring box. That one's going to go right there. We engage it right inside of there. And I like to use a little bit of a hook to make sure it gets pushed all the way back. Being careful that you don't accidentally nick it or push too hard and you've damaged the Teflon. Then you have to replace that tube. Okay. So we got our brew unit in, but we're not done with the brew unit here. We have to make sure we put back the motor. Otherwise, it's going to give us a crazy clicking, clacking sound that sounds absolutely horrendous. We did drop the screw earlier, which I'm grabbing and retrieving right now. I'm trying. There she is. Get it up in there. Get it tight. A little oomph. All right. Essentially, well, you know, I'm getting ahead of myself because, yeah, we've got the whole side of the machine done and all the way back, all the way to the front, and we'll produce here. But we need to replace our front spout here, and then we can get testing our final test. Now, this is a little precarious at times and can take a little bit of work. But essentially, we're just reversing the process in which we've put this on here. Now, what's important is making sure you got these metal slides that interact with the actual spout to attach. And they will pretty much stick when they touch. And we can bring them down a little bit just to make it work. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and push the whole assembly in. Make sure we're up and down, and now we're ready to reassemble, or at least put their screws back in. Enough to get this thing tested. Let me get this in here while I've got it out. And we need our little screws here. Okay, not too shabby. Getting this guy up in here. Let's get a little bit of cleaning on those edges there. We won't be able to get them very easily later. So we got them now. Just get your fingernail right in there and just Get in the groove a bit. And it's nice and clean. The same thing over here. Just scrape off that layer of dust that accumulated over all those years. Just a quick little clean. We'll get a deeper cleaning once we get it, but that's going to be what we wanted to grab. You want to do all those little edges, you know, because those are very difficult to get later. This little guy, we're going to put somewhere. Where are we going to put this little guy? Where did he break off of? Looks like right there he broke off of. So we'll hold that there. Alright, let's put all the wiring back in place inside the little tabs. Got it. Excellent. Now this one's pretty tough to get on its own, so we're going to try to make sure we get this. Oh, I gotta get some O-rings. This one's a tough one to get. If they ever feel like really tough, make sure there's not an O-ring like left in there, because that can definitely happen, and that makes things very difficult to work with. Oh, before I do that, I want to make sure I missed a couple screws here. We don't want to miss any screws here. We got the ones that mount this one. I got these two here. We are missing a screw. Ah, there it is. Okay, and I should have one last clip left. It's kind of easier to get it in this way. There you go. Make sure we got no wires caught before we push the bottom in, and we're just going to attach one here, just so we can do one little bit of testing. If I can just get the right port here, if I'm not tripping. Oh, I see. You can see that. Let's get around here. So it's all bent, loosey-goosey. Sure, when they put it back in, they just let it screw in, and I didn't notice it coming out. We'll do a little bit of that, and that should help. A little bit of this. Excellent. All right. We're ready for some testing here. I like to test it with its panels off so that we can get a good look at everything in here. Go ahead and get these screwed on here while we're at it. There we go. Okay. Oh man. This is great. Let me clean that up real quick. Okay, cleaned up. Let's go ahead and turn this little gal on and listen to her roar. Oh, well, she needs some water. Let's go ahead and get that going. Already sounds a million times better. Okay, we got a pump that's not sucking in. Whether or not it's sucking up because it can't, because there's a block, it's very possible. So what we're gonna do real quick is be careful as we pop this little guy off. Okay, got it. I'm gonna try this again. Oh. So that doesn't tell us if we've got a clog here what I'm basically saying is we're getting no flow at all, and it could be because we have I don't know what I'm saying. I'll be right back. Alright, just had to make sure we got water coming in through that tube. Let's make sure we gotta fill this system up. I'm thinking we'll just replace this pump. It is, after all, probably, I don't know how old it is, but I don't know these pumps as well. They don't really put a date. Maybe that's 314? I don't know. I doubt it. Okay, what I'm not seeing here is the spray of water, or at least water coming into the I need to be careful here. Yeah, so we've got a vapor locked pump. It's not even producing anything. So we're gonna replace this pump real quick, and that is going to solve our problems here. It's a bummer because well, it's not a bummer. I mean, it's good that we got to replace it because now we know what's going on, but it's just probably just a very old pump. Just get this stuff out of the way. Okay, I don't like those on the table because you can knock them over without even knowing, and it stinks to make it look. I mean, it sucks. It doesn't stink, but you know what I mean. So we'll pop this bad boy off again. Put it up here. Okay. I don't like these ones because, you know, they discourage you from opening them. All right. I guess we'll replace it with this one. With a new membrane. That makes it easy. We can replace. Ouch. Alright, so I'm swapping this out with a known good one. It's in my stock. We'll save them some bucks on a pump, which is nice. And it's a identical pump. Probably not from the same, I mean, they're made the same. Probably take over at some point. Because yeah, ARS is what's out there now. Alright, just pushing everything back into place. Oh yeah, nice and clean. Nice and clean. All right. Let's get this guy in there. Get an O-ring in here first. I believe it's a 6.5. Tripping. It'll probably be easier to remove the door again, but we've screwed it in, and I've done it a few times this way, so I know it's totally feasible to screw it in. Sometimes I'll just choose the difficult path until it frustrates me to the path where I just say, okay, let's just do it the easy way. Come on. There we go. There you go. So you can actually get a hand in there so you don't cross thread this little thing. At any point you start twisting this thing up and it like resists you and you feel like you're like doing it really way too harder than you have to do it. It's very possible it's cross threading. You need to watch out. All right, let's get another O-ring. Pop that little guy in there with a little bit of lube, because that's what I'm talking about. If it's fighting me, it shouldn't be fighting. It should be loving you, wanting to get in there real nice and easy. Okay, let's get our okay, it's all up in there. Okay, put this back up. It's a little easier to test when it's all in place. Something's fighting me over here. There we go. Okay, let's get back to this. And let's see if we can't get some water to come out of this brew unit, or this unit in general. Alright, so we're probably dealing with a clog in the actual boiler at this point. A clog which led to the demise of this pump that we replaced. We still may be in there, so we're going to actually go a different route now. And we're going to get into the boiler system. I don't know why that's not just sliding out. Maybe because you need to remove this. Yeah, doy. Okay, so what we need to do is confirm whether or not we actually have flow through our boiler. Now the easiest way to do that is just to pop this O-ring off here. Excuse me, this water line. Careful. And there's pressure. This actually gets hot. Now pressure built up in there. So the next thing you want to do is take off another end. And now we have a clear port through the actual boiler. And so if you blow in through one end, hopefully you get some work through the other end. So we'll go ahead and we'll test that by popping this guy on here like this. And look at that, we've got a boiler that wants to do that. Next thing I want to check then is that now water is being sent to here to clear out. So are we getting clear there? Is this called cleared out? Let's find out. So there's a clear line there, and most likely a clear line to the solenoid itself, making sure we're unplugged still. Okay, so let's test if we get water out of here. We don't. So there's a clog right here, and we must have missed that when we replaced that O-ring earlier. So let's go ahead and pop this off and see what is going on here. We are definitely seeing a clog in this right here. So is it a clog in the tube itself? No. So we must be actually locked in here. So let's go ahead and remove this part here. Rare tools to use in a Jura. Wrenches. You rarely have to use any wrenches for these machines. In fact, they don't even use this particular fitting. Everything is plastic now, their fittings. Probably for a good reason. Because when you get a clog in it, you can just buy a new one instead of buying one of these. I'm not getting a good grip over here. There we go. And just break the, tighten it, the oomph in there, and most of the time these should be able to just come right out like that. Alright, so let's get a look-see poo here. Oh, yes. We're seeing some, definitely some clog up in here, which I was just able to clear out. Let's go into the bottom side here, which is where we know that it's jammed up a bit. Like that, we've got that solidly through. Let's double check we actually can go right through the boiler with water. Okay, that confirms that we got no clog in here. Yeah, you can see the amount of minerals in this. Alright, so both sides are cleared out at this point. But we're just going to go ahead and do a quick descaling to this. It takes just a minute. So we'll grab a cup, just something like this, I suppose. Really doesn't matter, we keep it clean or not, but I'm just gonna, no, that's too dirty. Ah, there we go. So put it in a cup, just a little cup with a little bit of citric acid. Fire that up for a little bit and wait, you know, about a minute. I'm gonna take a food break, I'm hungry. All right. All right, this thing's cleaner than the day it was made. All right, we should have no doubt that we're going to get flow now. At least that's the hope. Okay, put this one back in. That guy, our greenie. Okay, and then the last thing to check is to make sure that this solenoid ain't clogged up too, because that may well be the issue as well. And we don't want to put this back together without checking that first, because it means you'll have to do it anyways if it doesn't. So let's just get it done. These are on here pretty tight, feels. Okay, no clog. Good, good, good. This work moves up and down pretty nice. Okay. Pretty confident that we cleared the clog. And we are almost ready to try again. All right, you put that back on there. Okay. It's just a matter of putting everything back to where you found it before we get one more test. Lost an O-ring? No problemo. I remember seeing it fall anyways. Lube it up. Okay, let's get this in here. Okay, excellent. Let's get this back in here. All right, everybody's connected again. Okay. Okay, we are just about ready to try this out again. Just gonna put back a couple screws. Make things a little easier for us here. Okay, Testerooski number 3. Well, number 2, I don't know. Let's test her up. All right, let's fill the system up. That's water. So it sensed the flow of water finally and got to work. So we're past the startup stage and into the heating phase of the machine. We are on our way to a test of the brew system. I 3D printed this little funnel here to make testing a little easier. All right, she is flowing once again. Water comes all the way from here out through here. That is the back and the front of the machine. That is some good news. Excellent. Let's go ahead and just start with a single bean. Can I do that? Maybe the middle one don't work so well. Yeah, well, okay. You see how that dispenses too much under strong? We're gonna have to set the aromas to medium or mild, just so that we don't overload, because boy, can it create a strong cup of coffee. All right, we're gonna go ahead and do one of these. And the aroma, we gotta change her. Standard aroma. We don't want it overloading. Temperature high. It's going to burn your espresso. Okay, so we've lowered the dosing a bit. Perfect. That's how it's done. We're gonna get this buttoned up and put back together. Let's do it. Okay, one panel. The other panel. Excellent. Let's give that a little cleaning. I don't want to overlook something like that. Okay, look at that. All nice and clean. Rebuilt. We're gonna test one more time while everything is in place. Kind of like a dress rehearsal, if you will. Let me get these guys cleaned up and put back. Excellent. Let's add some more water. All right, let's make sure find the drip tray cover in here somewhere. Oh, there's this thing. I don't see the drip tray cover in here. Excellent. They don't need to run that long. This is an espresso machine after all, so you really just want to limit it to making espresso, but you know, it'll handle longer pours. Just be prepared to have overly expressed coffee. Well, that's about it to it. So all you want to do now is just change the filter on this bad boy. We're gonna actually, let's see, I think you can trigger the clean system here this way. Maybe not. And they all have different ways of triggering here. Let's see. Yeah, that rinses. Okay, well, that's about it. We completed that repair. Got that finished. Let's go ahead and clean it up and get her out of here. That's how it's done.